Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Franchise Euphoria. Josh Brown here. Today, I've got Rick Cesari on the show, and I'm pumped to have him on the show. He's a brand guru. I mean, for any of you who are out there trying to grow your franchise brand or get your brand recognized and grow your sales and grow the identity of your brand, you definitely want to tune in. Rick is really a pioneer in brand response advertising and has been so since the early 90s. He's helped create the concept of sell while you brand, and he's been the force behind the creation of many of today's top consumer brands, such as the Juiceman, Sonicare, the Breadman, the George Foreman Grill, OxiClean, Clarisonic, Rug Doctor, Momentus Golf, and GoPro. And in fact, he's helped companies like GoPro go from startup to over $1 billion in sales in just a few short years. And he's got a new book that's coming out here in the summer of 2018 called Building Billion-Dollar Brands. And he certainly has experience doing that. If you know anything about, obviously, the George Foreman Grill and the Juiceman and Rug Doctor, obviously all of these brands utilized infomercials or direct-to-consumer marketing. So we talk a lot about that on the podcast today, and we talk about how things have changed over the years, and with all these additional mediums that people have to get the word out, how do you as a franchise business help build that brand and build it successfully? So I think you'll really enjoy this interview with Rick. He's a great guy and really provides a tremendous amount of value and experience in this space. So without further ado, here's my interview with Rick Cesari. Hello, Rick. Welcome back to Franchise Euphoria.
Hey, Josh. Great. Thanks. Great to be here.
I say welcome back because you've technically been on the show before because we recorded it at one point in time, but it never went live because we had technical issues. So happy to welcome you back. We were talking a little bit about this, off the recording, but you've got a tremendous history with brands. I mean, some of the brands, as was indicated in introducing you, was iconic brands, the Juiceman, Sonicare, the Breadman, the George Foreman Grill, OxiClean, Rug Doctor. I mean, it goes on and on and on. I don't even think I hit all of them. But really, in franchising, it's so important to be able to sell your brand so that you can build your brand. I mean, how did you come about this idea or this notion of the brand responsive advertising that you've mastered, but I think you began back in the early 90s.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And one thing I want to point out to your listeners are, because you mentioned brands that are very well known now, but I didn't start working with them when they were big companies and had lots of money. Almost every one of those brands were startups, or they were very early in their growth and sales cycle. And we just basically used some direct-to-consumer marketing, which we can talk about more as we move forward, and some basic steps for helping them build their brand. And so just, we don't want to scare people away thinking, oh, these are big brands, they can afford to pay a lot of money. Every one of them that I worked with were doing zero or very little in sales, and we're able to basically build them from nothing to pretty successful, iconic brands just by some of the marketing that we help them implement.
Well, and so is that, and you're saying you did that through a direct to consumer kind of marketing, I mean, going on, doing infomercials, all those sorts of things, right?
Correct.
Was that something that you came up with, or did you see other folks doing that? I mean, I'm trying to remember back into the early 90s. I can't remember when I first saw my first infomercial.
I'll tell you a little bit about the background just because I didn't necessarily come up with it, but I've probably been doing it as long or longer than anybody in the country, really, because the very first people to start using them actually started in the mid 80s, and they were using them to promote real estate seminars. And I was in the real estate business. And actually, my background, I have a degree in biology, believe it or not, but I just had a knack for marketing. And I started using them to help promote some live real estate seminars. But my real passion was health and nutrition. And I had an opportunity to work with someone named Jay Kordich, who was known as the Juiceman. And we used the same television to really drive people to live seminars, and basically gave them a 90-minute talk or lecture about the benefits of drinking fresh juice. And by the end of that time, the people were ready to buy a juice machine And that business kind of just took off and was the start of all of the other brands that you mentioned.
Well, and the idea behind it, right, for people is you're basically showing people how these things work. I mean, you're showing them the benefit, right? I mean, they're getting good visual of the benefit of it, and that if you can do that, and it's something where it resonates with people, then you can start to really build up a brand from that. I mean, is that the whole concept?
That's part of the concept, and that's one of the really important things. And actually, when we're talking about the juice machine, one of the reasons we had a lot of success, and just so your listeners know, we were able to grow that business from 0 to 75 million in sales in just over 4 years.
Wow.
And we were up against big companies out of Germany called Krups and Braun. But you mentioned focusing on the benefits, and one of the things we did, those were German engineering companies, and they talked about the features of a juicer, a stainless steel blade, and a half horsepower motor. And what we did is we focused on the benefits of the product, the benefits you would get from drinking fresh juice. You could have more energy, lower your cholesterol, things like that. And so we really didn't focus on the machine. And that was something that took off. And really, I used then as something in all the other products you mentioned with the Sonicare toothbrush. We didn't focus on the sonic technology, but the fact or the benefit that it could clean beyond the bristles and reach bacteria in your mouth that was beyond the reach of other products. So that's something to keep in mind. Regardless of your business, is always focus on what the benefit is to the end user or consumer that you're trying to market to.
Well, so you said you got a degree in biology and you just had sort of a knack for marketing. I mean, how did you get into that? I mean, how did the Juiceman people, when they were starting out, how did they find you, or did you find them, or what was the circumstance that led to you guys working together?
Yeah, that goes back to I mentioned I was in real estate. So I graduated with a degree in biology. I was going to school in Pennsylvania. I applied to dental school, and I didn't want to go to school for 4 more years. So I moved back down to Florida where my family was living. And I started reading a lot of books. I'd alternate between a motivational book like Think and Grow Rich, and then one where I was looking at how people that had made a lot of money made money. And at the time, it was in real estate. So I got a real estate license and started basically trying to buy real estate. But I went to a lot of seminars. And after I had some success at one of the seminars, the person started using me as a testimonial. And then I helped him do some marketing. And that's really, I learned it just by going out there and doing it. And so that was one where I learned that skill of driving people to live seminars. Then that's where I was able to use that same thing for the juicer business and then some of the other subsequent businesses that I was in.
Well, and we all know, I mean, I got to imagine doing infomercials on television have to be kind of expensive. I mean, you're getting a lot of time on air. Is that assumption wrong? Am I wrong in that assumption?
No, it is. And again, that is an expensive first step for many people is using TV. But what I try to focus on with any business that I'm working in is to figure out a way of using some direct-to-consumer marketing. It doesn't have to be TV. I mean, I still use direct mail for some things. But the important thing to remember is that when you're advertising, and this is the difference between brand advertising and brand response, is there always is some type of offer where you're asking the people to respond. And I know you work a lot in the franchise business, and I know that there are many different things, but there has to be some types of promotion that you're putting out there where you're asking people to actually, instead of just advertising the name of your business or company, you're giving them a reason to respond and either come into the store or get more information from you that will lead to a sale. And I'm, just a big believer in driving sales as a way of building the brand.
Now, do you primarily, I mean, many of these companies that you've worked with, they sell products. So do you apply these same strategies to service-based businesses?
Yes, absolutely. There's always, basically the background, a lot of the brands you mentioned were consumer products, but we've worked with many service businesses as well that we utilize the same concepts. And let's just take it. We talked about features versus benefits. One of the biggest things that a business can do, or I've always had success with over the years in the businesses and products that I've worked with, is basically using what I call authentic testimonials. Somebody comes in to or utilizes your service, or comes into your store, or comes into your business or franchise. The more you can basically get and basically advertise the testimonials of happy customers, the more that's going to lead to success and more people coming into or using your business or service.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's so true. I mean, that's the thing is, having people pay attention. It's like the Yelps, right? Yelp of the people. It's so funny. I was just on a family trip, went to Florida. Every night we're trying to decide where we want to go to eat, and the first thing we do is we go to Yelp, and you sit there and you put blind faith and trust into other people that you've never met. You don't know them. You have no idea what their food tastes are like. But I can remember sitting there with my family, and and my wife would be saying, well, this restaurant has, a rating of 4.7, and this restaurant has a rating of 4.4. So let's go to the one that has 4.7.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And that's just a testimonial, essentially.
Yeah, it's a testimonial, and you're using the Yelp as the distribution channel where you read that. But a lot of products, like the reviews on Amazon, if there's a way that a business or service could be marketed there, that's something that happens. But I think the important thing, we were talking about TV advertising, and that can be very expensive. Something that's more affordable and you can deploy it is going back to these testimonials. The more you could set up a day where you could get half a dozen happy customers or people and sit down and videotape them and ask them, what they liked about your business, what they didn't like, you would really get some really great feedback that you could use to help improve and market your business. But then now you also have these people on video that you could then put that video on your website or on YouTube. And that was kind of a strategy we used. One of the products you didn't mention was with the GoPro camera, that we basically interviewed or basically had people that used the GoPro camera send in videos of them using it. And that business kind of grew virally just from people sharing the exciting videos that they found on the website.
That's awesome. That's one of my favorite companies too. I mean, that I love the GoPro. And in fact, when we were in Florida and I had a camera, I was kicking myself because when we were in the ocean, I was telling my wife, I go, man, I needed to get my GoPro for this trip to be able to go.
It works underwater too.
I know. That's why I needed the GoPro. I needed to be able to go underwater. So, but you started working with them. It's from startup phase, right?
Yeah, I was. Sometimes I'll go to different trade shows and walk around just to kind of see what's new out in the marketplace. And I was at the outdoor retailing show in Salt Lake City. This is probably about 8 years ago now. And the founder of the company, Nick Woodman, was basically selling these early prototypes of the camera out of the back of a Volkswagen bus. He couldn't afford a trade booth, so he brought his Volkswagen bus, kind of a surfer type setup, put some sand on the floor and some lounge chairs and an umbrella, and was basically selling the cameras to people that would walk by. And for whatever reason, either it was his salesmanship or the product itself, I told him that this would be a great product that we could help market, and basically started working with them and had a little bit to do with helping them go from zero to about $1 billion in sales in 8 years.
Yeah, so he went from the back of his VW to a shark on Shark Tank. But didn't he go on there as a guest at one point in time?
Yes, he was on an episode of Shark Tank, and when I met him, so 8 years later, after the company went public, he sent me an email the day that they went public, thanking me for his help. I would have preferred to get more stock options. That would have been better. But since then, he's bought a Gulfstream and a 180-foot yacht with a helicopter on the back, and takes surfing trips with his friends now. So he's made out well personally. The business isn't doing as well as it was earlier because of all the competition, but that was a real big success story.
Well, it was so innovative. And the thing about it was that I talked to so many people, especially in the production world, who were literally now, scraping, getting rid of all their, thousands and thousands of dollars of equipment and everything, and just going with a GoPro to film things.
Yeah, the technology was really awesome. It was a great little camera for the money, and many TV networks were using it. They used it quite a bit on The Deadliest Catch and a lot of others because it just works so well and is so portable that it's just kind of spread like wildfire. It was the right product at the right time.
Well, so obviously, like when you're working with somebody like, Nick from GoPro and some of the others, you had a history there that you could tell them about with some very well-known brands. So I'm curious, so when you are starting to work with GoPro, are you the idea guy? Are you the guy that's coming up with, hey, let's, you said it kind of blew up virally, right? Because you had people sending in their own videos. Are you the person who comes up with that and then kind of helps build a strategy around it? And same with like the infomercials. Are you helping to write the infomercials, or like what's your exact role in that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And, there's an old saying, success has many fathers, but failure is an orphan. And with the case of the GoPro, Nick actually came up here, and we had a few. I remember this. We went to a local restaurant that was on Lake Union and had a few beers, and he ordered some chili cheese fries. And we sat down, and he told me how he wanted to grow the business to $1 billion company. So he started out with this vision. I think probably one of the biggest things that I did, and absolutely not taking just taking a small piece of the credit for it. But it goes back to that direct-to-consumer marketing. So he could have just made regular videos, but one of the things that we came up with, and if you look at any GoPro video, there's a couple unique things about them. Everyone is started with a brand logo and ends with a brand logo. So it's kind of like a sandwich, and then the user-generated footage is in the middle. But I think the biggest thing that helped propel the sales growth was that we started a contest. So at the end of every video, whether it was online or ones we put on TV or wherever on YouTube, it said, go to our website and someone will win one of everything we make every single day. So there's that direct-to-consumer response component. So people would see the video, they liked it, they would go to the website, and three things would happen. One, in order to enter the contest, they'd have to leave their name and address. So the company started to build a database, and they were able to remarket to these people. The second thing is that people would go to the website and they'd see other cool videos and share them, and that's how it grew virally. And the third thing, which is the most important and the best, is that many people that went to the website actually bought the cameras. So the advertising became kind of a self-funding advertising campaign. And I think it was that little thing that we did at the very beginning of their business that helped with their initial growth.
So is it harder now to get people's attention? In this world we live in now, I can imagine in the 90s, you're doing infomercials, stuff like that. Really the primary medium then what was TV, a lot of people, eyeballs are on there. And now you've just got so many mediums capturing people's attention. Is it harder for you when you're working with brands to really figure out how you're going to get that attention that you need to help propel these brands?
Yeah, it's definitely, it's kind of a trade-off. I could answer and say, yes, it's harder, but on the because if you wanted to reach a mass market before, like you just said, you could make a TV commercial and reach many people. Now people's viewing habits are changed, but from a marketing perspective, there's many, many less expensive ways to reach the consumer, and especially targeted to the consumer, so that it's actually, from a marketing perspective, a little easier. I was reading a great blog post recently about the advent of what they call mini brands. And if you think about, let's just take the mattress category. There used to be many different mattresses, but now all of a sudden, like a mini brand like Casper, or
Yeah.
there's other ones. And these companies were built specifically with maybe Facebook advertising, or maybe just doing email, or building a website and doing e-commerce and email marketing. And I think that, and those are very much affordable ways to reach directly to the consumer. So what you have to do, or a business has to do, is find the channel that works best for them, create some type of response mechanism, and then when they have success in that one channel and they start to grow a little bit, then they could expand and market in different channels.
Well, I'll never forget the first time I saw a Casper. I was at a mastermind group in Tennessee that I was a part of, and we're all sitting around, and I think it was either UPS or FedEx, or some truck pulls in at the property we were at, and they drop off this box. It's like, oh, what's in the box? And so the box gets open, and it's the Casper mattress, right? So that was genius in and of itself, right? I mean, it's like they sell themselves. That's a talking point, because your mattress is folded up into a box, and then you open it out of the box, and then 5 minutes later, it's like this beautiful, perfect mattress. I mean,
and that's an important point you're making there. That these guys are taking on big mattress companies that have been around for years and years and years. And so how do they differentiate themselves from other products out there? And that's really, I think, the key to building any brand is, what's your unique selling proposition, or what differentiates you? And you just kind of talked about the Casper, something that made them different than any other product out there, and people start talking about that, and it becomes a little bit of word of mouth advertising that helps the product grow.
Yeah, and I think they had that component, the visual kind of component. They also had, I think they were one of the first in the mattress category, I could be wrong on this, that try it out for 100 days, and if you don't like it, you can return it. I mean, can you imagine that? I mean, that's the thing about getting a traditional mattress is, first of all, it's like, you go get a king size mattress. If it's any good, you're going to spend, $2,000 to $4,000, and God forbid, you don't like it after a day or two, you're stuck with it. Here, it's like, try it out for 100 days, and if you're not happy, send it back, and you haven't lost any of your money.
Yep, and that's actually kind of a key component to any type of brand response or direct-to-consumer marketing, is offering a very liberal money-back guarantee to get somebody to try your product or service. And really, we can talk about these things, but underlying a lot of it are basically financial pro formas. Like in the case of Casper, they probably have done this, and they know that their return rate, even with that 100-day or 120-day money back guarantee, which is a really big selling point, they know that maybe only 5% of the people that try the product will send it back. So, but to basically go out and make an offer like that, that's kind of disrupting the whole mattress thing. Look at shavers. How expensive it is, or used to be, to buy, and still is, to buy Gillette shavers and things like that. And then along comes Dollar Shave Club and Harry's doing direct-to-consumer marketing, starting with a little niche brand, starting e-commerce, and basically disrupting the whole shaving industry.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's just, I love those kind of stories. The thing about it is that the number one question I get, Rick, after I'm working with a franchise system, after I turned a business into a franchise, they're registered, they're off to the races, is, okay, now what? Right? I mean, how do we grow from there? And it's so interesting, because every single one I've ever done, that's always the question I get. And so, I've tried to, help them. Obviously I'm an attorney, so I do the legal side of things, but I've tried to help them with the strategy side of helping them build their brand. I'm curious from your perspective. I mean, you've seen a lot of businesses. You've seen, a lot of franchise businesses. I mean, what are some of the mistakes that people are making when they try to build their brand and grow their businesses?
For me and the successes I've had, it's important to think of your brand, but I think that you have to place the priority for any business, and the lifeblood of any business is sales. And you kind of almost every one of these brands we've talked about, and there's many, many more. I noticed you were a golfer, and we've had some golf products like Momentus Golf and things like that. We help build a brand. But to answer your question, really focus on how they can get sales in the door. And if you start getting sales in the door, um, you can build your brand as the business is growing. It's almost like that old saying you hear, like you can build the airplane as you're flying it. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have your ducks in a row and your brand logo and colors and things like that. But 100%, not 100%, but a big percentage of the focus should be how do you get sales in the door, or sales online, or sales or customers in the door. And as you're doing that, I think that you can be building your brand as the business is growing. And that's where my focus has been on almost all of these products, and how to make that happen. And then as people start using it and sales grow, unless you make a big mistake, the product or service kind of evolves into a brand.
Well, that I love that point because one of the things I'm always trying to tell clients is to uh, go a little slower. It's a little bit counterintuitive, especially in the franchise space where you have companies out there that want to take businesses and, hey, we'll take you from 5 locations and turn you into 150 locations in a few years. And I have the exact opposite philosophy because I think the franchise graveyards are filled with companies that try to grow too fast. And I think that people need to slow grow, and then it will naturally happen. It sounds like that's what you're talking about with the branding. I see too many people who are trying to force the growth as opposed to take care of your customers, figure out your growth strategy, figure out where you want to be, what distinguishes you, who's going to be a good franchise owner for your business, where they're located, and take it step by step, and the growth will happen naturally. The brand building will happen naturally, but you can't force it on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with everything you just said. And you have to be working from a solid foundation. And again, something you've heard over and over. I believe in the philosophy of crawl, walk, run. And why we talk about infomercials, we can't create an infomercial and make a company blow up in a good way, until there's a solid foundation to work from. And almost every one of those brands had a good product, a good service, and a solid foundation that you could work from before you kind of poured gas on the fire. So I'm absolutely a big believer. You mentioned there's another saying I think I like is most of your branding or company's branding happens after the sale. And you mentioned about how you treat the customers. And those are the things as you're building your business, you should be really, really focused on the customer experience. And that's really what brand building is the experience that each customer has when they come in contact with your business. And then they literally don't underestimate the power of word of mouth advertising, especially with social media these days. So the best experience you can give each customer is really kind of a slow way to build your business. And then almost every business kind of hits a point where, wow, the foundation is good. The customers like our product. We're able to give them great customer service. And then now you can put in advertising that can help the business grow.
Now you've got a book coming out, right? It still hasn't come out, called Building $1 Billion Brands.
That's correct.
When's it due to come out?
August 1st, and it'll go into a lot more detail on many of the brands we talked about today, but really kind of from a startup standpoint, what are some of the basic things that all these businesses did in the beginning and then as they grew. And they can get that at my personal website, which I didn't have the first time we talked, but it's rickcesari.com. That's RickCesari, rickcesari.com. And I have my original book on there called Buy Now, and then also the new one. And then also they can download some good information on there when it comes to building their brand.
So do you still work with folks? I mean, you're working with companies still?
I do on a limited basis. I've transitioned. I've owned a direct response agency for the last 25 years. And literally in the last year or so, I've started to transition to doing more speaking, writing, and consulting. But every once in a while, what I feel is like a fun product or project will come along, and then I can kind of dive in and get hands on and work with the company or person that has a product or service.
Well, you've had a tremendous career. I mean, some of the brands that you've worked with, I mean, all of them are just legendary. And obviously there's something to exactly what you've been able to do. And I just appreciate you coming on and sharing that a little bit. Because like I said, you know, the biggest problem in franchising for new and emerging franchisors is they don't know how to build their brand in the right way. So I so appreciate you coming on here and sharing some of that, sharing some of your experiences and knowledge, so that hopefully some people who are listening can take that to heart, you know, from somebody who's done it over and over again.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the questions and the conversation, because I believe our philosophies are pretty much aligned in the way we would approach a business. And you know, I've had success doing it, and you've had success doing it, and you know, just for the listeners out there, just find an affordable channel. I forgot to talk about PR. I know we're kind of wrapping things up, but I've started a couple businesses just using public relations and PR to drive people to a website. And whatever you can find that works, that will pay for itself, is at the end of the day the key to building the business.
Well, I'm just going to start telling my clients, you know, don't take it from me that you should do this. Rick agrees with me as well. And I think that there might be some more credibility there. Well, listen, you've been a treat. I really enjoyed talking with you. I'd love to have you back on to talk about the PR. Definitely when your book comes out, if you're making the rounds again, definitely reach out to me, because I'd love to dive into that. Love to read it.
Yeah, I'll send you a copy, and I would love to really maybe dive in. This was kind of a broad brushstrokes overview, but we could get down and talk about some tactical things that some of the companies that I'm working with or I've worked with in the past have used to kind of get started and get those sales coming in the door, and you know, get a little bit more specific with some ideas that your listeners could use.
Let's do it. And I will leave that as a teaser, right? We'll leave that as a teaser for the next time that you come on to do that. Because, I mean, I think that would be I think this broad strokes, you know, the interview today is good because it kind of gives people sort of the framework from which you work. I would love to dive into the details a little bit more, because I think people can extrapolate a lot of things from that as well.
Yep, and one thing to keep in mind is everyone thinks their business is different, and it won't, and what works for one business won't work for another. And I've been fortunate to work with many businesses along many different categories. And while one thing, you know, isn't necessarily true for everyone, a lot of the techniques and the things we talk about have worked over and over again for many different businesses in many different categories. So I think it would be a real benefit to your listeners.
Well, thank you again. I look forward to staying in touch. Thank you, Rick.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for being with us today on the Franchise Euphoria podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to go to iTunes and provide a review. Also, please remember that although Josh Brown is a licensed and practicing attorney, nothing contained in this podcast should be construed as legal advice, because it is not. The information contained in this podcast is general and educational in nature, and none of it should be relied upon as legal advice. That being said, if you have questions for Josh and would like to contact him, please email him at josh@franchiseeuphoria.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you tune in to our next weekly episode.